As I'm looking down at Peter Anthony, I began to feel as though something attached itself to my solar plexus. And I felt myself being vacuumed towards the spinning tunnel. And I'm sitting there seeing people from my past, you know, my teachers, you know, friends, my sister who'd passed away, all greeting me. And I say this because there was no, oh my God, what's that? You know, you're not panicking, you're not freaking out, you're not asking questions. I think the most important part of what's taking place at that time is I'm allowing. So my abilities as a psychic began.
What made you ultimately choose to go back?
You know, I could start crying right now, and I'm not going to, but sorry. Okay, sorry. You know, compassion. So many people ask me who was Peter Anthony before the near-death experience. And for me, looking back at that old version of Peter, there was this quiet, introverted, barely spoke a word. If you got a nod out of me or a yes or no, you know, everyone applauded because Peter Anthony spoke. I was born and raised Catholic in a very strict Italian religious background of Catholicism. And I think when I lost my family, my sister being my best friend and, you know, many others, at that horrible period of my life, I was thinking, how could, you know, a just loving God just take away your family? And I became an orphan at, you know, in my 20s. So that for me was my pull away from God. But back into who I was at the time of my near-death experience, I was with the CBS News Division. I rose to the top of the ranks of my industry, working with many politicians and certainly a lot of celebrities. And so I was in the height of my career when this took place. And so I said, for me, looking back, who was Peter Anthony? Well, Peter Anthony at that time was motivated by success, money, and I had a selfish goal. My day of the near-death experience, and I was celebrating my birthday party and with a wrap party. When I got to this private party, I began to feel nauseous. I began to feel this pain in my stomach, not knowing at the time that it was related to a misdiagnosis back of 6 months earlier. And the doctor at that time had diagnosed me as having a stomach ulcer and gave me Tagamet. And, you know, I just... gosh, I wasn't playing my part, going to the doctor and doing appointments, because at that time I was extremely busy. And, you know, if you know the old adage, you know, the show goes on. Well, I didn't have time to go to the doctor because the show went on. And anyway, back at that evening, I remember blowing out my birthday cake. And as I took my last breath on the candles, I doubled up in pain and excused myself and went to the bathroom. I went home. I thought I was okay. Got to my door and the pain came around and I was bleeding on my suit from my lower area and my pants. And I passed out again. And one of my neighbors found me. David took me to he called the ambulance and we went to the ER that night. And I remember in that ambulance, the faces on the paramedics. Here I am reaching for my side, my abdomen, and the pain, as I said, was unbearable. And I could see their faces of obviously, you know, panic and asking me questions I didn't have the answers to. That's where the drama began. They didn't want to check me in. I had gotten out of my suit, you know, for my friend David because I was bleeding. I got into some thrift clothes. I left my wallet behind. I didn't have any of my insurance documents. During the height of the AIDS epidemic in the late 80s, 90s, and they looked at me and were quite scared. And back during that period of time, unfortunately, we didn't know how AIDS was, you know, how we got AIDS. We didn't know if it was airborne. We didn't know if it was blood. We didn't know nothing. I had lesions on my face. I was coughing. I didn't know at the time I had tuberculosis. I didn't know at the time that I had Crohn's disease. I didn't know that Crohn's disease basically, you know, was exacerbated by food and or other things. And here I am bleeding, and here I am not being admitted. So David kind of went to bat for me and kind of threw a big old temper tantrum, and I got checked in through the admitting area. They had a young intern come and suited up. Oh my God, this guy was suited up like I was radioactive. And I remember the look of panic in his eyes was, to me at that time, was frightening. And I asked him, I reached up to him, and when I did, he panicked and pushed me into a corridor by the exit and left me there. And here I am, bleeding on a gurney. And I must say that it felt like an hour and a half. A nurse opens up and opens up the exit doors, comes in, sees me on the gurney. Her face of, I guess, bewilderment. What are you doing here? Anyway, this nurse saved my life, went beyond the call of duty, and took me down to the OR. I remember going into where she actually, put my gurney into OR 11, and she pushed me into this little room. Here I am on my gurney suit, my suit, but my clothes bleeding. And I could hear when she closed the curtains that she was arguing with with some nurses and an anesthesiologist. I remember the anesthesiologist saying that, oh my God, and what have you done? You have exposed us to the AIDS virus. And she was arguing with him. What little bit I could gather, it looked like there was some kind of debate. I just remember I could feel spinning. I could feel this, I guess, this tug on my solar plexus. If you know anything about the movie industry, there's a thing called slow-mo. And as you are in this very edited, slow pause, if you will, I remember me, Peter Anthony, looking down at Peter Anthony from spirit form, looking down at Peter Anthony in physical form on the operating table, and watching the medical staff, doctors, the anesthesiologists go to medical protocol. It was like some kind of movie and some television series where everything's just happening at once. I could hear their thoughts. I could feel the panic. I could see the fear as I'm watching myself look down at Peter Anthony. This sense of peace, this sense of okay, this sense of allowing, this sense of surrender was a part of what's going on in my consciousness. And I want to say in my consciousness, because as I'm looking at physical form, Peter Anthony and Peter Anthony's spirit form, of course, when we think spirit form, we need to understand this. There is no form, physical form of the person, meaning the spirit form looking down at Peter Anthony in physical form. There's just this sense of feeling, this sense of knowing, this sense of ethereal understanding. And as I'm looking down at Peter Anthony, I began to feel as though something attached itself to my solar plexus. And this is very important for many of us because it's as though this was some kind of vacuum that had attached itself, how was it attached itself to my solar plexus? And I felt myself being vacuumed towards the spinning tunnel. And I'm sitting there seeing people from my past, my teachers, friends, my sister who had passed away, all greeting me. And I say this because there was no, oh my God, what's that? You're not panicking, you're not freaking out, you're not asking questions. I think the most important part of what's taking place at that time is I'm allowing. The interesting thing about the people that you see, when you see them, you see these young people in the height of their careers or the height of their youth, or you recognize them immediately as these people that were a part of your life, and not that older version of life, but the people that you recognize. I remember seeing my grandfather, and I was like so amazed at how young and energetic he was. So you're seeing different parts of your world from your past, meaning your relatives and your friends, people that I didn't even know had passed. I saw a girlfriend of mine that I went to high school with that had passed. I didn't know, and there she was. Not only did I see these people from my past and they recognized me, and they made me feel at ease, but as I'm going through this tunnel, I'm seeing quantum physics downloading and digesting. I'm seeing mathematical codes to this day that I'm fascinated by. The numbers 333, 444, 999, 777, and a series of zeros, 000.00111.0. All these numbers floating in around me in this tunnel. and colors and sound that even to this day, I can't even identify with, because it was something obviously from the other side. I think what I learned while I was going through this tunnel, that we are so manipulated by judgment. Our whole society is about, a Christian versus, Muslim, gay versus straight, rich versus poor. When you're on the other side and you're going through this tunnel, there is no judgment, there is no opinion, there is no better than, there's none of that. What I experienced on the other side is when you are in this tunnel, all there is love, compassion, and kindness. That for me was a huge lesson. The opinions of others, if they don't resonate with my consciousness of today, it doesn't matter. What matters is my truth. What matters is my opinion and how I feel. And I'm one that I don't judge as much as I observe and come to my conclusions. So for me, the math, the colors, the sound, all this information that I'm sharing with you today, took me 7 years to digest, and probably 7 more years to kind of fully believe, because many didn't. I ended up in this tree. And I think for me, I didn't know at the time. I began to do lectures years ago. The facilitator said, "Oh my God, you ended up in the tree of life." So here I am in a tree of the tree of life, right? And next to me is this being, this advanced being. And again, when I say advanced being, I definitely know it was a male being. I definitely know that it was something far more intelligent than anything I'd have experienced. So I listened. I allowed this being's way of being to guide me to my life review. 0 to 60. Your entire life, from the moment that you're born and to the moment I died on my operating table at 11 p.m. in operating room 11 for 1.11 minutes, your whole life is just there. It's like a matrix. Every second of your life, every moment of your life, everything that you forgot about, everything that you thought that no one was watching you, you see it. You see the conversations you had. You see the moments where you weren't at your best. You see yourself, not being nice to the person that worked at a pharmacy who was, the cash register attendant. You see your rudeness. You see also your kindness. You see everything that you were doing or not doing, should have done, didn't do, could have done, all before you. And I go back around here, which is very important. No judgment. You don't look down at Peter Anthony going, "Wow, you were rude to that lady on the telephone when you were trying to dispute your credit card information. You were rude to the tech at the cable company." You don't judge yourself as much as you go, could have done better. That's what you're thinking to yourself. It's almost as though you have this love for yourself, and understanding of self that I can't even begin to explain. Every step that you take from the time that you're born until where we are in this conversation today matters. It is a part of your destiny, if you will, that every step, when sometimes something doesn't go our way, I sometimes say so many times in so many lectures, sometimes the rejection in life is protection. Before I came back, I ended up in this place called Bordeaux. Now, this is something that is very important, because I have so many people who, when they hear this part of my story, they question, they doubt. Bordeaux is what Catholics would call limbo, purgatory. The Buddhists refer to it as Bordeaux, the in-between state. Imagine being in outer space, and you see every planet, every galaxy, every star, every moment. You're kind of suspended in galaxies upon galaxies, and here I am having this connection with, I call it God. You can call it whatever you want, allowing me to see our planet, us as a warring nation, and we think about, that when you look down and you look at country after country, war after war, from World War I, the Civil War, World War II, Vietnam, you see all this you identify the ego that has basically destroyed our planet. You see the decisions being made by those people in power that we continually vote for, who take our power away. And I think that was a big reality check for me, because I thought, we're allowing people, again, going back to the opinions of others, to create laws that basically went against our very nature, called being good on this planet. For what? For profit, for greed. So that was a big reality for me. And so I'm seeing the war that goes on. I'm seeing the destruction of our planet. I'm seeing our environment slowly but surely die by our own hand. I'm seeing, the animal kingdom being persecuted. You're not judging it and going, oh, my God, we as a collective consciousness, as mankind, as humankind, we're not a nice consciousness. But I'm going to digress here, or actually, not digress, but take you to another set of consciousness. Not only was I seeing that, but I saw nurses and doctors, I saw paramedics, I saw school teachers, I saw housewives and husbands, making a difference on the planet. I saw those that we don't even know about in their neighborhoods, helping people out. From the simplest kind act of saying hello to complimenting other people when they've had a bad day. We don't realize that our one bit of kindness, our one little hello could be the very thing that changes someone's life. And so I saw lots of those moments, understanding that there is a balance of the not so good energy and the positive energy. And I think for me, the biggest awakening that I had, and I still talk about it to this day, that there is no Catholic, that there is no, evangelical consciousness, that there is no black or white versus gay versus straight. There is mankind. And I think for me that mankind is here as a way to help each other. And we kind of forget that. So as I said, I'm looking down at this place I call Bordeaux. It's not that I'm looking down again as a form of judgment, but as a form of awakening. Looking at the destruction, looking at the persecution of the animal kingdom, the wars fought in the name of religion. You're seeing all this, and I just remember the voice saying, "Do you want to go back?" I saw, the struggles I would have coming back. I saw the new gifts I would embark upon. I saw the relationships that would leave me because of them not believing in my near-death experience. I saw all of that. "Do you want to go back?" the voice said. And I said, yes.
What made you ultimately choose to go back?
I could start crying right now, and I'm not going to, but sorry. Okay, sorry. Compassion. Am I going to make a great difference on this planet? It's just me. I mean, there's one little person, but I did learn throughout my, stages of coming back that one person can make a difference. And I ask you, for those who are listening, is it you? Are you that person? When I did come back into my body, and I go back to that moment of that vacuum cleaner to my solar plexus, I remember the moment I hit my physical body. In other words, when soul reconnected with Peter Anthony in physical form. I remember that as though I was shoved against the wall. The impact, the force of me connecting with body, spirit to body, was, you just don't forget, or at least I don't. And I remember being able to smell the drugs in my system. I remember the pain in my abdomen. I could feel the lines of surgery inside and out. My senses, when I came back, even though I remained unconscious for almost 3.5 weeks to 4 weeks, I could smell. I remember I was heightened. My dear, lovely lady at the time in my life, when I was in intensive care, she would come and she would read to me. And I don't know what happened, that But she was a numerologist, and she was a psychic. She was into all this, what we refer to as witchy woo-woo. But she also was very religious. And so she combined both ways of teachings, reading to me while I was in intensive care. And I could look down and watch the doctors and nurses, in the hallway laughing and making fun of her. And I remember when my doctor, my own personal doctor came in, and he asked her what she was doing. And she said, well, I'm reading to him. And he goes, well, he can't hear you. And she said, yes, he can. I'll never forget that moment, because I did. Everything she read to me was a part of my new awakening. Everything she taught me in numerology and astrology. An example, I remember her saying to me, to this day, Aries is ruled by the number 1, and it's about me, myself, and I. In a previous lifetime, you chose to come back in this lifetime to lead. You were, perhaps an extraordinary person, and in this lifetime, you're an ordinary person to come back to do extraordinary things. She just would read to me and say these things that would go down 1, number 2, and identify with each zodiacal sign. And I remember listening to this, and I remember when I regained consciousness, the first thing I asked her to do was to go get me numerology books. And she kind of looked at me like, wow, I had to know what I saw on the other side. I had to know what these numbers meant. And again, there was nothing there that identified those triple codes. There was nothing there that went into the quads of consciousness, these angel codes, nothing at that time. And so I think for me, that was my first aha. That was my drive, again, the beginning of my mission. The hardest thing for me, looking back at that moment, was the friends and what little bit of family I had, and those who knew me, didn't believe, didn't listen, who left me. What I learned is everything is carbon matter. Everything is connected. My action begets a reaction, begets something else that's negative or positive. If you understand that we are all given choices every day, so if you're in a bad relationship, you got to make some changes there. You got to own up to it. You got to have your own little powwow with self and say, I can't allow this to be a part of my consciousness. So for me, this whole change was a metamorphosis. My fascination with numbers and numerology and astrology and my psychic abilities took over the new Peter Anthony. It's as though, and many will relate to this and many won't, it's as though while I was on the other side, someone new stepped in and took over Peter Anthony's body. I can handshake someone and get a blueprint, a psychic read, if you will, on that person. I can hear their thoughts at times. And not by, as though the audio is tuning up and I hear, no, that's not me. You can learn a lot about a person by what they don't do. So my abilities as a psychic began. Years and years of studying numerology and codes, what have you, trying to figure out what happened to me on the other side, began to unfold. My life changed by a phone call from a homicide detective. He was working on a case they couldn't resolve. He knew about my gifts as a numerologist. And so anyway, that kind of changed my life. The next thing you know, I get a phone call from a series at the time called Sightings, which is at that time one of the number 1 reality shows when there were no reality shows. And here I am, working with forensic experts. And then I'm, the next thing I'm doing another show and another show and another show. And I'm traveling around as a psychic detective, working on cases that were, rather unusual. And, again, not trying to change your mind about who I am and what I do. But, I think proof's in the pudding when you look at these shows that I did and see what we uncovered. So, as I said, the more I worked on numerology as a tool to solve these cases, the more incredible the client list became. We were working on a case. I can't tell you the name of the celebrity that we were working with, but he was a non-believer. We were in a Catholic church downtown Los Angeles, and there she was, the nun in this Catholic church. Ghost, if you will, talking to me, leading me to where this child had, fallen down the stairs in the basement. So, yes, I see spirits. I've worked on so many different cases that I see things, can explain things. There's one if all of you who doubt, if you want to go into my website and just scroll till you get to borderline, I worked on a case that goes back to World War II in an internment camp of the Japanese American citizens, and how they were basically, as citizens, were taken to this internment camp here in the United States in Death Valley. And you see me walking on the land, there's nothing there. And as I'm walking on this land, I'm telling, the camera and what I see, what's going on, what happened basically in I believe it was in the early 40s. If you want to say I time travel back to that period of time, I did. If you want to go into my website, click on my video sections, you can see a whole list of my shows that I've worked on. What I learned through my many years of investigation, we fluctuate between logic and intuition, right brain versus left brain. I've learned to use both at the same time. We've all had those moments when we should have, could have, would have, not done, should have done, did do. And I think the more and more that we listen to our intuition versus logic, when your intuition speaks to you, it's 100% accurate. It's our logic that persuades us that something didn't happen. What I began to do as a psychic detective or working on different cases, and I still do this today, I allow the spirit, the ghost, the feeling to be a dominant part of my consciousness and let it lead me. And so we all have that ability. It's just I've just taken it to another level. And what I say to so many of my listening audience, you're not in physical form. You're consciously aware. And so the gift that you come back with is to be tuned into everyone's consciousness. As I said, when I go to a park and I listen to the birds, chirping their secret codes as they fly from tree to tree. When I watch the squirrels running from rock to rock looking for their secret little treasures. When I watch the duck swim upon a lake and it's, quacking with its little ducklings, I listen because it's there in Mother Nature that I find God. I call those the cathedrals of consciousness. And so for me, when I'm tapping into that spheric ionic waves of consciousness, I'm tuned in to everything. And that's where we are making our biggest mistake, because we're all about, the phone call. We're all about the meeting. We're all about, meeting deadlines with the boss. We're all about, winning. And we forgot about how to use our intuition. And that, if you have to break down anything, is what I learned to do the most. Our gift on this planet is every moment that we're here. We're here to make a difference through kindness, through compassion, through love, through helping. We are lacking in hope. We look at our educational system. We look at Wall Street. We look at our politics. We look at our planet. We have lost hope. And if you give mankind, just a slither of hope, they'll run a mile with that. And that's my mission.